Welcome inside the Miner Lounge. I'm your host, Andrew Miner, and basketball season is upon us. And while the Baylor men might not be playing this Wednesday, the Baylor women certainly are as they take the court Wednesday evening against Central Arkansas. In today's episode, we're going to take a look back on last year's season and a look ahead to what the Lady Bears are up against this year. And really try to understand if it's a Final Four or bust year for the Lady Bears, who are still technically defending national champions. They beat, of course, Notre Dame in the national championship down in Tampa in 2019. That was with LSU transfer point guard Chloe Jackson. Last year, they thought, hey, maybe we can do this again with transfer point guard Atea Cooper at the helm. And of course, everybody knows that the basketball season unfortunately was cut short due to COVID-19, the global pandemic that paused life as we know it. And it was interesting, Baylor actually didn't even compete in their own Big 12 tournament. They were one of the few women's basketball tournaments that, the conference tournaments that were not able to go on. So last year, Baylor, of course, went 28-2. They finished with a 17-1 Big 12 record. They won the Big 12 regular season title for the 10th time, and they've won 8 of the past 9 Big 12 tournament titles. Of course, last year, due to the pandemic, their Big 12 tournament was canceled, and they never got a chance to truly defend themselves with Lauren Cox, Juicy Landrum, and of course Taya Cooper, and all the other pieces that they have. Of course, those 3 names that I just mentioned are departing. They were drafted into the WNBA. Congrats to all 3 of those players. And it was truly heartbreaking for Lauren Cox. I think Lauren Cox is probably on the either on the Mount Rushmore or close to on the Mount Rushmore for Baylor women's basketball in terms of players. And she really could have cemented her legacy with back-to-back titles, something nobody at Baylor women's basketball has ever done. So that was truly, truly unfortunate for her. And she was obviously such a great player throughout her career. One of 6 Baylor Lady Bears to be in the 1,000 points and rebounds club. So last year, it was your typical straightforward year for Kim Mulkey. Schedule some pretty notable opponents, some tough competition in preseason tournaments, and get a game against UConn on the schedule, and then blow through the Big 12. So what they did was, of course, very, very impressive. Their only loss was to South Carolina. So they beat number 22 South Florida last year. They beat number 17 Indiana, and they lost to South Carolina, who eventually would finish the year number 1. They only had 1 loss. Oddly enough, South Carolina, the Gamecocks, actually lost to Indiana last year. The one big asterisk on that game, if you will, Lauren Cox was out with an injury, was not playing, did not play against South Carolina. So that was a big question mark, especially when she started coming back and finding a groove with Melissa Smith and Taya Cooper being the straw that stirs the drink. And you saw that in Connecticut when the Bears went up to UConn and snapped the Huskies' 98-game home winning streak, and did it pretty handily. They won 74-58. It was basically a 1-possession game, pretty back and forth until the 4th quarter, when nobody could seem to score a bucket for that first 4 or 5 minutes of the 4th quarter. And then Melissa Smith, I believe it was, that got several key buckets down the stretch. I think she did an 8-0 run by herself in that game to really help the Bears pull away. And I think UConn only scored 4, maybe 6 points in the fourth quarter, that final stanza. And that was a really eye-opening win. It was definitely probably the highlight of the Lady Bears season last year. And they only got better. Baylor only got better from there. They cruised through the Big 12 portion of their schedule. They never had a contest that was closer than 10 points. They only had two, but there was asterisks by there where Nalissa Smith was injured for those two games against TCU and Texas Tech. That in kind of near the top half of the front end of their Big 12 schedule last year, where Baylor only beat the Frogs and the Red Raiders by 9 and 8 points respectively. Smith did not play in those games. Of course, Smith had those 20 points against UConn. Cooper had 27. And once the team was fully healthy, Cox, Landrum, Cooper, Smith, Queen Egbo, they were really firing on all cylinders. And that's not even to mention D.D. Richards, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, Moon Urson, great six woman off the bench for the Bears, as she's been doing so her entire career at Baylor. And their only stumble was, unfortunately, that last game at Iowa State. They lost 57-56. Yes, on the road. Really unfortunate questionable foul call with seconds left against D.D. Richards. Gave Iowa State the 1 point victory. It was Baylor's lone conference loss on the year. Unfortunate for them, they couldn't do back-to-back perfect Big 12 seasons. But they had locked up the Big 12 title well before then. Of course, everything was canceled after that, all the tournament play. But it would have been interesting, I think, if the tournament had gone, to see if they could have gone to Coach Mulkey's hometown of, not hometown, but home state of Louisiana and New Orleans for the Final Four, and see what they could have done. They most likely would have faced Oregon and South Carolina. It probably would have been Oregon in a 2-3 matchup in the semifinal and the Final Four. And then if they could get past Sabrina Ionescu and the Ducks, then there would have been a revenge game against South Carolina with a fully healthy Baylor. I tend to think that Oregon was probably the best team with everybody that they had, and that would have been a revenge game for Oregon, having lost to the Bears in the Final Four the year prior. Plus the Ducks also beat Team USA up in Oregon. So I think the edge probably would have been to Oregon there, but unfortunately we just never know. I mean, that was going to be the matchup. It was going to be those three teams, and I think UConn as the other one seed that we probably would have seen in the chalk Final Four, but that was going to be a very, very exciting Final Four. Disappointed that I couldn't be at Bourbon Street to witness that due to, of course, the pandemic. Fast forward, Kim Mulkey, big congratulations, being named to the Hall of Fame, the Basketball Hall of Fame. So congrats to you, Coach. Well deserved. Picked up her 600th victory last year, and now with 3 national titles and 21 Big 12 titles in total under her belt, she's going to look to rebuild and reload at Baylor here in 2020 and 2021, presuming that everybody stays healthy and hopefully that we can get some of these games out on the court and roll the ball out and play. So what we're looking at here, of course, Cox, Cooper, Landrum, gone, departed, drafted. Congrats to those three. The big thing is the returners are D.D. Richards, Moon Urson, Queen Egbo, Nalissa Smith. A lot of power inside, great forwards and centers in Smith and Egbo. Richards, terrific defensive player, was going to have to probably pick up more of the slack at the point position, the ball handling capabilities. For her, Moon is going to be hopefully a really fundamental piece in her, believe it is senior year here. A couple of transfers that Baylor got in, just looking to use that same tired and true process for the past 3 years, or 2 years, and make it a third year. They're bringing in Stanford transfer Dejone Carrington out of Stanford 2 years ago. She missed most of last year, only played 5 games due to a knee injury. But she's ready to go. She's eligible to play right now for the Lady Bears. 2 years ago, she averaged 14 points and 7.5 rebounds a game in the year that Stanford made the Elite Eight. So she's the true point guard looking to follow in the footsteps of Chloe Jackson and Taya Cooper. And it's really interesting because Baylor didn't have a grad transfer player in their program history until Chloe Jackson came over from LSU. So that's the blueprint. That's what Baylor is going to go with again. So it should be really interesting to see Carrington on the court with a Baylor uniform. She should give a much needed boost to replace Cooper. Obviously, Smith and Egbo. Nalissa Smith is just an animal and a monster. Really, really powerful. Both of those ladies can dunk. And they've been able to do that for a while, so they put a lot of work in, and they're really a force to be reckoned with. A couple of additions to Baylor are 2 freshmen. Hannah Gusters is a 6'5" freshman that's coming in. She's actually going to be the tallest. She's listed as the tallest on the team, so it should be really interesting to see how quickly she can learn and contribute to Baylor. And if she can't right away, that's probably okay because they have Egbo and Smith, such experienced veteran players to really kind of continue pushing Mulkey's old school philosophy, big, powerful centers and forwards there for the Lady Bears. What will be interesting is Sarah Andrews is a 5'6" guard coming in, and Bears are probably going to need to rely on her a little bit more, sooner, just because of some of the shooting, the guard play that they lost in Cooper and Landrum, both in the scoring and the shooting and the dribbling, right? Like just your typical guard stuff. But even more so now, it's imperative that Andrews and other players can come in, pick up the slack, because in practice a few weeks ago, Dee Richards and Moon Erston actually had a collision in practice, going for a loose ball that left both of them injured, with very serious injuries actually. Moon suffered a concussion and has been in concussion protocol. Dee Richards, and I want to make sure I get this right, suffered a spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormalities. So she blacked out, she lost feeling in both of her legs, and really couldn't have feeling in her legs, with spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. Anytime you hear spinal cord in an injury in the same sentence there, that's tough. That's even scarier than I think maybe a concussion. Of course, concussion long-term effects. You want to make sure that you go through the process of recovering right for that. But the spinal cord injury, when you're dealing with, are you going to walk again? Or at least that's what comes to mind. That's a whole nother level visually, I think. So the good news is that Dee expects to play. She's working really hard to get back out there, and she's actually posted a few videos of her shooting and going through some of the rehab of shooting baskets and things of that nature. So they got an incredible team in Waco with their trainers and doctors, Alex Olson and Jeremy. Just really all-around team. Behind the scenes helping those players recover and from, again, really serious, really unfortunate injuries that occurred before games even started. Just another really devastating blow to really the state of the Baylor basketball program, both both programs just taking blow after blow of bad news, it seems, and it's unfortunate because both are ranked so highly. So what's a little bit more adversity to get to the promised land there. A couple other transfers that Baylor has coming in that won't be eligible this year, but Kamaria McDaniel is a transfer from Penn State, and Jaden Owens is a transfer from UCLA. Both quality, highly talented and skilled players. They'll have to sit out this season. Lastly, looking at everything, looking at what the Bears lost and what they're going for and trying to do this year is really no different than it was last year, just really different circumstances. It'll be interesting when we're looking at the schedule here. They of course take Central Arkansas on Wednesday at the Farrell Center. That game probably shouldn't be close, but I think it's important to get roll the ball out and actually play a game, get it under your belt. They will play South Florida again this year at South Florida. They're not the Bulls aren't ranked this year, at least in the top 25, but Baylor will also play Arkansas. They're 14th in the nation, before kind of starting their round robin slate in the Big 12. So the Big 12 schedule, the conference, the league is looking to improve this year. The only other ranked team are the Iowa State Cyclones. They're 15th. They're obviously the team that Baylor lost to last year. That has to be circled on Kim Mulkey's calendar there. And the big game is hosting number 3 UConn at the Farrell Center Thursday, January 7th, 2021. Hopefully we can all make it that far and get another great installment of the Baylor-UConn rivalry, and hopefully Coach Gino Auriemma and Kim Mulkey continue to schedule that for the foreseeable future, because last year was really a great game despite the big score that Baylor won by. It was really tight and phenomenal game. It was a great atmosphere, and it was a great atmosphere the last time the Huskies were in Baylor at Baylor. So that's really the key, and I think that's where you're going to learn a lot. I think you'll learn probably a little bit early on, but the way it goes, I think you're just going to have some blowouts like Baylor normally does. It will be interesting just to see early on how quickly that materializes, but the big game to truly learn where this Baylor team is going to be UConn on January 7th, and that's always an exciting matchup. But the Bears are ranked 4th, the Huskies are ranked 3rd. The two teams ahead of them are South Carolina and Stanford at 1 and 2. They're not on the schedule, so that would be teams to look out for across during the course of the season, to see if they drop ones that could maybe let Baylor move up, but more than likely to see how they are in preparation for March Madness and a run to San Antonio for the Final Four and potentially defending a national championship. So the last thing is that they're at Texas in the final game of the season. Obviously, Texas-Baylor is always an interesting rivalry and a lot of bragging rights on the line. What makes it interesting this year is that Vic Schaefer is the new head coach there of the Longhorn program, brought in from Mississippi State. Of course, Baylor lost in overtime to Mississippi State a few years back in the Elite Eight. Devastating loss to Baylor there. That's why Texas brought in Coach Schaefer to try to reverse flip the fortunes of these two programs and beat Baylor and kind of get a leg up. So it's his first year, but it should be interesting nonetheless. I'll say the Baylor Bears kind of run the table here. I don't see them losing. I think Nalissa Smith and Queen Egbo are too good. If Moon Ursing and Dee Dee Richards can get back to full health, and Sarah Andrews and Hannah Gusters can quickly learn the offense and what they need to do, and provide some valuable minutes off the bench, then I think the Bears will have a great foundation, and the key question will be how effective and efficient will Parrington be for Baylor, especially coming off that injury. I would expect them, if all is well and everybody's at least somewhat healthy, I would expect them to roll through the Big 12 schedule. I'll say they go 17-1 again, and the key will be UConn. I think again we'll learn very early on where Baylor stands, but I'll say that Baylor beats UConn as well, kind of runs the table in the non-conference. I think they'll finish the regular season with one loss. I think they'll win the Big 12 tournament, and then I think they'll definitely get to the Final Four in San Antonio, and they'll win it all again. So that's kind of my take. Again, we'll be with you every step of the way inside the Minor Lounge to kind of discuss the games as they go for both for both programs, men and women, and it should just be really, really fun. And we're just very, very hopeful here that Baylor can get on the right track, and that all these teams are able to safely and effectively play some basketball. And I think that's all anybody wants. I think that's definitely all that the players want, and I think fans are very eager to get to it. So there you have it. Kim Mulkey, another national championship after a disappointing end to not only Baylor's season last year, but the careers of some all-time Baylor greats. But Baylor is loaded. Look to them to continue to produce on the inside, and ride another transfer point guard to the promised land with a ton of defense. So thank you for joining me inside the Minor Lounge, and Sick 'em Bears.